Over the years, there have been literally hundreds of brilliant movie endings, but many of the best are only so effective because they've been planned, rehearsed, and perfected long before they were actually shot. That's not the case with the following examples though, all of which came together at the very last minute thanks to a sudden burst of director creativity, inspired improvisation from actors, or post-production edits that concluded the story in the best way. Today, we're celebrating all of these, but before I start, I do want to give a huge shout out to the recent Reddit discussion on our movies that did inspire this video to begin with. That was great stuff. For now though, I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are the 10 best unscripted movie endings ever. Number 10, You're Okay, Captain Phillips. Paul Greengrass's thriller, Captain Phillips, comes to a head when the eponymous Captain Rich Phillips, played by Tom Hanks, is saved from the Somali pirates holding him for ransom and ushered aboard the USS Bainbridge to receive medical attention. Though this scene seems well planned and rehearsed, especially when you notice the brilliance of Hanks' harrowing performance as Phillips breaks down, the truth is that the whole thing was actually filmed as an improvisation, complete with real-life medics who were thrown into the scene at the very last minute. According to Hanks, quote, "We went down there and we had the actual crew of the ship that we were shooting on and said, what would you do to someone that came in here? And they said, well, we lay them down here, we do this, that, and this. And Paul said, well, shall we give it a try? We shot it, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, I guess. We had literally the crew of the infirmary. They didn't know that they were going to be in a movie that day," end quote. And considering the raw emotion of the scene, its origins really are something to marvel over. Number 9, I Don't Want to Go, Avengers Infinity War. The finale of Avengers Infinity War was one few moviegoers were prepared for, as the mad titan Thanos retrieves all of the fabled Infinity Stones and uses them to maniacally wipe out half of all life in the universe. Despite all of their best efforts, the various heroes of the MCU find themselves on the chopping block as well, with many of them literally biting the dust. No death hits harder than the demise of young Peter Parker though, who in a moment of horrible realization notices that he's about to die and heartbreakingly proclaims that he doesn't want to go. According to actor Tom Holland though, he actually improvised Spidey's iconic death with the help of one of his favorite acting techniques, explaining, quote, "A technique I do if I'm trying to cry is I'll say a phrase over and over again. So, for example, if I was in a scene and I was talking to someone and the undertone of the scene was that I love them, I would say in my head, I love you so much, I love you so much, I love you so much, I love you so much. And in that scene, it was, I don't want to go, and I just thought I would say it out loud, and it works. It's really good in the film," end quote. And in fairness, he was right. It was a great creative decision by the young star, and made Spider-Man's last moments the most devastating in the movie's last act. Number 8, we really did have everything, didn't we? Don't Look Up. Adam McKay's recent Netflix hit Don't Look Up may not be the best film on this list, but it certainly has a cracking final act. Following 2 astronomers, played by Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, as they attempt to warn the world that a comet is about to destroy the planet, in the film's surprisingly poignant final moments, the astronomers and their family and friends sit around a table, talking about tea and waiting for the end to come. Before the end, DiCaprio takes a beat to let his wisdom rip, simply stating, "We really did have everything, didn't we?" before the comet strikes. As powerful a line as it is, it's even more moving when you learn that DiCaprio actually ad-libbed it on the spot. According to McKay, he was so emotional about the line that he didn't even add it to the film until post-production, because it was just, quote, "the gut punch of all gut punches," end quote, and that he was also afraid of it. So yeah, the moral of this is that DiCaprio always understands the assignment, basically. Number 7, The Awkward Silence, The Graduate. When it comes to classic movie endings, you don't get much better than The Graduate. Mike Nichols' romantic comedy drama about the hopeless Benjamin, played by Dustin Hoffman, who begins an affair with an older woman before he falls in love with her daughter Elaine, played by Catherine Ross. After breaking up Elaine's family when his secrets come to light, Ben attempts to right his wrongs by rebelling against her upcoming wedding, an act of rebellious defiance that causes Elaine to run away with him. Escaping the church, the pair get on a bus, ecstatic, but quickly find their smiles fading, their futures suddenly clouded and unsure. According to Nichols himself, the initial script actually had some dialogue tying the movie and its central romance together, but in the end he decided to leave their fate somewhat ambiguous, opting to have Hoffman and Ross sit together uncomfortably by not telling them when he was going to cut. The actor's natural uncertainty surrounding the scene instantly made it a classic with few equals, and one that still wonderfully holds up today, music and all. Number 6, Tears in the Rain, Blade Runner. It might be hard to believe, but the final dying speech of Rutger Hauer's Roy Batty in Ridley Scott's sci-fi masterpiece Blade Runner was actually massively improvised by the actor himself. Though some version of the speech appears in David Peoples' initial script, Ridley Scott basically allowed Hauer to play around with the dialogue and make it his own. Hauer kept some aspects of the speech in, including the references to C-beams and Orion, but he ended up adding the haunting Tears in the Rain line himself. As the actor puts it, quote, "Ridley gave me all the freedom because he wanted it to be a character-driven story. He said said, "This is what I want to do. Bring me anything you can come up with, and I'll take it on if I like it." For the end line, I was hoping to come up with one line where Roy, because he understands he has very little time, expresses one bit of the DNA of life that he's felt, end quote. The results of Howard's last-minute improvisations speak for themselves, with Batty's speech remaining the film's most iconic scene, and an ending that finishes Blade Runner on a particularly wrenching high. Number 5, I Am Iron Man, Iron Man. Before the MCU was the cultural juggernaut that it would soon become, there was just Iron Man, as played by the perfectly cast Robert Downey Jr. from his 2008 debut to his heartbreaking sacrifice in 2019. Throughout the franchise, Downey Jr. was known for his rapid-fire ad-libs, but no improvisation was more effective than his final line in 2008's Iron Man, where he gives a press conference about everything that's happened in the movie, only to scrap his original plans and proudly proclaim, "I am Iron Man." According to super producer Kevin Feige, the actor fought for Stark to reveal to the world that he was Iron Man in this scene, which he agreed with on the basis that it was totally in character for Stark to take the spotlight, and because it was in keeping with the tone of the comics. As also noted by Feige, Iron Man's final scene changed the MCU forever, and in a beautiful case of things coming full circle, Downey Jr. actually improvised the same line in Avengers Endgame, where Stark's death was originally written without the superhero saying a word. Number 4, he stole my line, Good Will Hunting. No actor was better at perfectly improvising brilliant scenes than the late great Robin Williams, who ad-libbed his way through an astounding career complete with an Oscar win for his incredible work in the drama Good Will Hunting. In the film, after Will packs up his things and decides to race cross-country to find his ex Skylar, the final scene reveals that he left a note for Williams' therapist Sean Maguire that reads, "I had to go see about a girl." This is a touching callback to the story Sean told Will earlier about meeting his wife, and the scene was supposed to just end there with no dialogue, but Williams went rogue and wittily muttered, "Son of a bitch, he stole my line." According to Damon, quote, "Robin's best addition is the last line of the film. There was nothing scripted there. Every time he came out for a new take, I would read the letter to him because it's a voiceover. He came out saying different lines every single time. When he said, 'Son of a bitch stole my line,' I grabbed Gus. It was like a bolt. It was just one of those holy crap moments where, like, that's it," end quote. Number 3, breaking the fourth wall, Call Me By Your Name. The ending of Call Me By Your Name offers up one of the most haunting portrayals of mourning and loss ever captured on film, as Timothée Chalamet's heartbroken Elio Perlman stares into a fireplace and tearfully remembers the time he spent with his first great love, Oliver. The scene is extended over the closing credits. As Elio's eyes fill with tears, his lips begin to quiver, and he seems oblivious to his parents moving around behind him. Then, in a crushing twist, Elio steals a look at the camera, briefly breaking the fourth wall and giving the audience a more complete look at the heartbreak etched across his face. On the DVD commentary for the movie, Chalamet noted that this glance was not in the script, but that he wanted to do it to pay homage to the 2014 drama Boyhood. The director later commented on the film's final glance, stating that it's not sad, but, quote, joyful, and helps to emphasize that the character has become a man because of his lost relationship. Number 2, A Beautiful Friendship, Casablanca. One of the greatest movies ever made, what's so remarkable about Casablanca, even after all of this time, is how infectiously quotable it all is. Line for line, there are very few films as iconic and beloved. Many of the film's best lines can be found in the script, but there are a couple that were added into proceedings by the cast, including Humphrey Bogart saying "He's looking at you, kid" to Ingrid Bergman, and the film's immortal final words. After getting his love on a plane to Lisbon, away from her Nazi pursuers, embattled bar owner Rick walks off into a new life against tyranny with former foe Louis Renault, and says, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Incredibly, despite the immortality of the line, Bogart's final declaration was actually added in after filming had finished, with the actor coming in during post-production on the insistence of the producer Hal Wallace so it could be dubbed in. For a last-minute unplanned ending, it doesn't really get much better, with the exception of, number 1, I Can Walk, Dr. Strangelove. Stanley Kubrick's hysterical and timeless Cold War comedy Dr. Strangelove was initially supposed to end with all of the characters having an epic pie fight, but this was cut because Kubrick thought it wouldn't gel with the rest of the movie. Instead, then it ends with a montage of various nuclear explosions across history, played to Vera Lynn's song We'll Meet Again. Before that though, there's the hilarious moment where Dr. Strangelove himself randomly stands up from his wheelchair and yells, "Mein Führer, I can walk." Although Sellers, ever the brilliant mind, is said to have improvised many of his lines throughout the movie as various characters, it's the final declaration that fans remember most, thanks in equal measure to its sheer oddness and hilarity. The story goes that Kubrick allowed Sellers to ad-lib the Nazi doctor's final moments, and according to writer George Case, quote, "The day we did the sequence, I had 6 cameras lined up, and he came in and no one knew what he was going to do, himself included," end quote. Kubrick loved the line so much though that he decided to end the movie with it, and honestly, it couldn't have been more perfect.